of the famous hill and release their foot off of the brake, and then they see their cars roll up this hill, defying the laws of gravity. This attraction is known as a natural phenomenon driven by a magnetic force, but it still seems pretty cool. St. Ignace Mystery Spot, Michigan, USA makes its way onto this list at number 8. Back in the 1950s, 3 surveyors came from California to explore the Upper Peninsula when they stumbled across an area of land where their surveying equipment didn't seem to work properly. As they continued to research this land, they noticed a constant feeling of being lightheaded. Apparently this 300-foot diameter, you will experience objects behaving irregularly and you will feel real strange physical sensations. Now at number 7 we have the Magnetic Hill in Australia. This magnetic hill is located on Black Road on rural South Australia, and as you drive along this road you will discover the gravity is very strange in this location, and that's because when you drive down the hill and put your car in neutral, it begins to drive itself uphill. Anywhere else in your car would just continue to roll down the hill, and of course you'd have to apply the brakes or you're gonna crash into something. Waterfall Faroe Island falls into number 6. Can you guys imagine a waterfall flowing upwards? I mean, no, it's not real life right now. Well, here's an example of that in the Faroe Island that is located in the Atlantic Ocean between Scotland and Iceland. Although it might seem like gravity doesn't exist in this area, it's actually the powerful winds that are responsible for creating this illusion. Number 5 takes us all the way over to Magnetic Hill, Leh Ladakh, India. Here we have another magnetic hill of some kind because this location is also known to pull cars uphill. But some people even say that passing airplanes have to increase their altitude in order to avoid being pulled into this strange force. Electric Bray, Scotland makes its way into number 4. Here we have a location where people feel as though they're being dragged uphill by mysterious force when in reality it is just an optical illusion. Although the road appears to be running uphill, the configuration of the land on both sides of the road make it look as if the slope is going in the other direction. So this is why a car on the road in neutral will appear to be moving slowly up the hill, defying gravity. Next up at number 3 we have the Hoover Dam, Nevada, USA. If you're planning on visiting it, try to do this little experiment. Try to pour water from a bottle over the dam and you'll see that it won't go down, but instead the water will flow up. This happens because the very powerful upward current that the dam creates. The water is actually carried upward by the wind, but it's still pretty cool to see. Mysterious Road, Jeju, South Korea comes into number 2. This is a famous anti-gravity road in South Korea where many tourists would go visit. A lot of people believe that there is a mysterious force that prevents gravity from working properly in this location, but in reality this is just another spot where an optical illusion is fooling people. The mysterious road has a downward slope of about 3 degrees, but it appears uphill because of the higher surroundings. And finally, in at the number 1 spot is the Hudson Bay, Canada. For more than 40 years, experts were baffled when they discovered an anti-gravity zone surrounding the Hudson Bay in Canada. Scientists were unable to explain why gravity was so much weaker in this area until now. In their investigation, they discovered that the Laurentide ice sheet, which used to cover a lot of Canada and northern United States, was so large that it dented the Earth 10,000 years ago, which caused gravity to become weakened in this area. Scientists believe that it will be 5,000 years before the Earth can recover and get back to normal levels of gravity.
Number 10. Sandy Island. This island's located in the South Pacific. Apparently. Maybe it's not. We're not really sure yet. It's only been visited by a handful of people throughout history, but it will most likely remain uncharted forever, officially. See, the island seemingly disappeared. Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, someone lost an island. They're like, wait, was it this? West or east? I thought it was... The island's gone. Today we have islands appearing out of the ocean, but back then, this one vanished. Back in the late 19th century, Sandy Island was noted on a number of maps and nautical charts, of course. But years ago, people went to go check it out and they found nothing in the area. Yep, just water. Just a mystery South Pacific island. Yeah, we love those. Let's book a flight, I guess. It was located, supposedly, between Australia and New Caledonia. But where could it have gone, right? What's the deal here? What happened? Was it purposely put on the wrong location location on maps, or was it a human error? Either way, I want answers. Maybe it's just the planet flooding. It's probably that. That's sad. Number 9, Lake Vostok. Lake Vostok is one of Earth's lost worlds, okay? Despite it being the world's 6th largest lake by volume, and us living so close to a massive lake, I'm like, what? There was another one? Who knew? We don't talk about this one often because it's a subglacial lake that has been covered in a thick layer of ice for millions and millions of years. I'm Canadian, and I'm like, you know what? I'll still swim in it. Let's do it. I'll do anything. Because of this thick layer of ice, there's little to no sunlight that's actually able to reach the water. But despite this and freezing cold temperature, it's believed that somehow this lake is home to many undiscovered species. It's extremely difficult to search this water because of the, ice, and scientists thankfully don't want to contaminate the water with things like antifreeze or anything like that just to find out. So for now, the lake and all it has to offer, it's gonna stay unknown and unexplored. So no tubing anytime soon, I don't think. Number 8, the Amazon rainforest. Here we go, I'm itchy thinking about this one. The Amazon rainforest is massive. It covers a total area of 2.5 million square miles, right? It's bigger than we can even imagine. And it's home to the most beautiful animals and wildlife. Now, due to its size and dangers, a large part of the Amazon rainforest is uncharted. We have no idea what it looks like in any sense. In fact, it's considered one of the least explored areas on Earth. One of the reasons why this is the case is because not only is the forest filled with deadly animals like jaguars and anacondas, Brazilian wandering spiders, everything that makes you go, ugh, nope, stuff like that, but also explorers would have a tough time getting access to enough food and clean drinking water because, it's still the Amazon. There's not gonna be a Starbucks around where you can can you just fill this up, please? It's just water. Thanks so much. Can you make me a milkshake at 6 a.m.? Thanks. And not only that, the Amazon gets rain all year round, which can cause heavy flooding. Trench foot, that's probably pretty bad. The water levels can rise and flood, and it makes transportation through the area way too dangerous and not worth it. So we're gonna leave it alone for now, at least. Number 7, Cape Melville. Cape Melville is located in Australia, and it's home to another lost world of Earth, okay? It's just something we have no idea that even exists. Here we go. It truthfully wasn't discovered until recently, and that's due to the surrounding, wall of granite boulders that are hundreds of feet tall. That probably has something to do with it, okay? But inside the stone wall, it's amazing. It's mysterious and uncharted. It's this massive rainforest, which is just the coolest thing ever. Because of the more recent discovery and the lack of exploration, this area has been preserved in its natural state, which is something not easily found on our superpopulated, disgusting planet. This place is only accessible by helicopter, which is kind of badass if you really want to do it, and it's only seen one major scientific exploration yet. But on this one adventure, at least 3 new species were discovered, including the leaf-tailed gecko. Yeah, check this guy out. We found a dinosaur. How lovely is that? I'm sure there's going to be further research of this area to learn about all these endemic species that live there and, to study how they evolved to fit this interesting ecosystem. But for now, yeah, let's just leave it alone. Looks like something from Game of Thrones. It's horrible. Number 6, La Rinconada. This town is located near the Peruvian Andes. It's very close to a gold mine, and it's actually the highest permanent settlement in the world at 5,100 meters above sea level. Between 2001 and 2009, the population of the town increased greatly because the price of gold rose 235% during that time. So yeah, people are going to come out. Now, because of that elevation, the town has an alpine tundra climate and an average temperature of around 1 degree Celsius, so it's not comfortable. Many of those who work for the gold mines here work under a pretty horrible condition. They work 25 days in the month for no pay, and then for 5 days in the month, they can work for themselves, and they're allowed to take as much ore as they can carry on their shoulders alone. It's horrible. There's no guarantee that the ore will have any gold in it also. This is a terrible system, and it's why many of the town's residents still live in poverty. The town is a 6-hour bus ride from the nearest city on an unpaved road, and there's not really a regular bus schedule which goes back and forth, so it's going to be a really hard place to get to. Number 5, Palmerston Island. We're probably not going to see a season of Survivor here. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. Palmerston Island is a coral paradise located in the Cook Islands in the Pacific Ocean. Now, Palmerston is a very islet in a series of smaller islets that are on a set of coral rings. It's basically built on a coral reef that encloses a lagoon. It's the hardest place to get to. The only one of these islets that's inhabited is one that's called home, ironically. The closest island to Palmerston is Rarotonga, which is the capital of the Cook Islands, and it would be about 2-day sailing trip to make it to the 500-kilometer distance, so you gotta have those arms warmed up, I guess. But if you aren't already on that island or planning to stop at both of these islands, the next closest trip would be about an 8-day sail from Tahiti. Now, since the island is so small, there of course is no airports, so ships are the only way to get here, and supply ships only visit the inhabited island a few times a year. The reef only allows room for smaller boats to pass through, which makes any kind of larger ship unsafe to pass through. Obviously, it's not worth it to even take a large yacht. The island does see a tropical climate, but it's very exposed to tropical cyclones as well, which of course can cause a whole set of problems. So, worth it? Probably not. Just avoid it. Number 4, Valle du Javari. When I do videos on these isolated tribes of these worlds, we always mention Valle du Javari quite a few times because it's the home to the highest concentration of uncontacted tribes in the world. And that's part of the reason we know so little about it. And it's clear that this region has everything we need to sustain life, as many people live entirely off of the land and all it has to offer. But much of it remains a mystery, of course, which truthfully is probably a good thing. If we got involved, we'd probably throw out Disneyland there or something horrible. Aside from this area being protected in order to preserve the uncontacted tribes, the area is also surrounded by rivers that often flood or have currents that are too strong to even travel through, which doesn't make it easy to even get to. So again, leave it alone.
Elise, now that we've made travel so expensive, this golf course is all ours? How'd you get here?
Kayak. They compared hundreds of travel sites to find a great deal on my flight, car, and hotel.
Kayak. Search one and done.
Number 3, Marianas Trench. Around 71% of the Earth is covered in water, and yet the oceans are the places we know the least about, which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. Marianas Trench is located in the western part of the Pacific Ocean, just east of the Philippines, and it's the deepest part of our planet's ocean. It's scary to think of. It's really, I don't like it. James Cameron went there once, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna make 5 avatars. What did he see, right? I have some questions. The trench is in the shape of a crescent, and it's about 2,550 kilometers long and 69 kilometers wide. Its exact depth is unknown, but what we do know is that if we took Mount Everest, we'd be able to just fully put it in the trench, and its summit would still be underwater by more than 2 kilometers. So yeah, horrifyingly deep. The pressure is so deep in the ocean that it's far too great for humans to withstand. The temperature is also just above freezing, and it's impossibly dark. We're actually closer to tourists visiting Mars on an average than we are with tourists visiting Marianas Trench. You know what I mean? That's a weird truth. There have been a very small number of divers who have explored what is called the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known spot of the trench, but of course not without super heavy duty equipment like a, massive submarine, and no one's been able to stay there for an extended amount of time because, they'll get squished. Most of it still remains a mystery. Yeah, anything that lives down there too, also a complete mystery. Some deep sea squid, I'm all set. Number 2, Singi National Park. Singi National Park is located on the western edge of Madagascar, but today I want to talk about the 2 large geographical features in said park, which are Big Singi and Little Singi. Now, Singi can be translated into English as roughly where one cannot walk bare feet, and when you see this, you'll realize why it's named such. These rock formations are just jagged. It looks like something you'd find in outer space. They have these deep ruts cut into them by the groundwater, which has left them totally unable to be walked on or through. It's just, like I said, it's like something from outer space. This whole area is incredibly fascinating, and it's home to many endemic species because of its, unusual geography. Some of these species are found only within extremely small areas within the Singis because the summit, slope, and base of one limestone needle will all form completely different ecosystems, which is unbelievable. Every area has like its own creature that just comes out of nowhere. The Singis are a perfect example of what happens when humans leave a place alone and let nature and the earth just exist, right? Minus Disneyland's. It would be an amazing place to go to and explore, but because of the nature and the limestone needles, we can't just walk around with our Crocs. So again, leave it alone. And finally, number 1, Siwa Oasis. Siwa is an urban oasis between the Katara Depression and the Great Sand Sea in the Western Desert. The oasis is one of Egypt's most isolated settlements, but it's still home to around 33,000 people. The residents have developed a unique and isolated desert culture and language called Siwi, but they're also fluent in an Egyptian dialect of Arabic. The oasis isn't necessarily a super popular tourist destination, as the closest city is Cairo, and the oasis is still a 5-hour bus ride away, and obviously it's in the middle of the desert. But those who do take the trip certainly are not disappointed. If visiting, you can enjoy some locally grown dates and olives, which I can only imagine are just incredible. You can also swim in Cleopatra's Bath, which is a mineral spring, and you can even stay at the Desert Eco Lodge, which is built from mud and salt. That's beautiful. Tourism is actually a vital source of income for the oasis, so visitors here are welcome. I want to finish on a nice number 1 where it's like, you know what, this one you actually can go to if you're brave enough. Because of how isolated Siwa is, the culture and traditions of the people who live here really have been preserved, which would make it such an interesting and wonderful place to visit if you have the opportunity.
Starting off our list, in our number 10 spot, we have Gangkar Puensum.
This mountain has a long history of disputes on where exactly it is located, but for today's video, we'll call it on the border of Bhutan and China, which I believe is what has been settled on by researchers. This mountain is the largest mountain that has been unclimbed by humans and stands at a height of 7,570 meters or 24,836 feet. Studies and measurements of this mountain started almost 100 years ago in 1922, but it wasn't until much more recently that we began to acquire actually accurate details about it. The name of the mountain means White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, which becomes an important part of why this mountain remains unclimbed. In 1983, the mountain became open for mountaineering, but between 1985 and 1986, there were 4 separate expeditions that tried to summit it and failed. Because of what we spoke about before and how there were disputes on the location and inaccurate information, the first group who tried to summit it couldn't even find the mountain at all. In 1994, the climbing of mountains in Bhutan higher than 6,000 meters became prohibited due to spiritual beliefs, and in 2003, mountaineering became prohibited entirely. This is why the mountain remains unsummited, and while I'm sure it would be an amazing expedition for climbers, I think the idea of it remaining untouched is actually quite nice. And who knows what is going on up there in terms of ecology due to it being left alone. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Star Mountains. This massive mountain range is located in Papua New Guinea, and although we of course know about it, much of the area remains completely untouched by humans. This area is thought to be one of the wettest places on the earth, as it sees more than 10,000 millimeters of rain every year. At that point, you wonder why they're still measuring in millimeters, but hey, I'm not a weatherman. Due to the rain and just how torrential the downpour is, there isn't a spot in the entire range that can house a weather station. There was an attempt made to explore the range in 1959 by a man named Jan Sneap, who wanted to try and map out the area, and it was slightly successful, but not without struggle. During the expedition, they had 2 helicopters, but due to the altitudes, one of them ended up crashing, and they were forced to rely on their own manpower from then on. While this of course would suggest that humans have of course at some point visited the mountain range, as I previously mentioned, there are most definitely areas that remain unvisited by humans, and it's probably for the best if we leave it that way. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Namib Desert. This desert stretches more than 1,200 miles and is located along the Atlantic coast of Angola, Namibia, and South Africa. This desert is recognized as one of the driest places in the entire world, so exactly the opposite of the Star Mountains we just discussed. Compared to that 10,000 millimeters of rain from before, this desert is said to only receive 2 millimeters of water per year, which seems like a much more reasonable time to measure in millimeters. It also means that there's certainly not a lot of living species in this area, but anything that does live in this desert needs to be able to survive on the smallest amount of water possible, so humans definitely aren't top of the list for that. Not only is this thought to be one of the oldest deserts in the world, but it is also thought to be the home to more endemic species than any other desert in the world. This means species that are found in that specific region and nowhere else on Earth. There are less barren and dry areas of the desert that are currently inhabited by smaller settlements and some indigenous groups, but most of the area is totally unlivable. In our number 7 spot today, we have the center of the Earth. This should be one that's fairly straightforward, but if you're sitting there wondering why we've never been to the core of the Earth, I'm here to let you know. Basically, it's way too hot. But let's break it down even further than that. Basically, if you were trying to dig a hole to the core of the Earth, you'd start with the crust of the Earth, which is the thinnest of the 3 main layers, but humans haven't even gone through this entire layer yet, even in the deepest holes on Earth. Around 4,000 meters down, you'll pass the deepest mine on Earth, but that mine uses ice to keep its workers cool since it's about 60 degrees Celsius down there. At 12,260 meters, you'll get to the point of the deepest hole on Earth, the Kola Super Deep Borehole, and you'll be sitting in 180 degrees Celsius, but it won't be until you get to 40,000 meters that you'll get into the second main layer. The second layer is called the mantle and is responsible for 84% of the planet's volume. Here you'll be sitting at 1,000 degrees Celsius, which is about the temperature it feels on a humid day in Toronto, and you'll be drilling through rock. Just to cut to the chase a little bit, because we could sit here all day talking about the things you'll encounter on the journey, such as diamonds, by 3 million meters down, you'll reach the third layer, which is the outer core. This will see temperatures that are similar to the surface of the sun. By 5 million meters, you'll reach
Most people have no clue that in 2023 the best way to make money on Amazon is not
reach the core, and if you can just dig another 1.5 million meters, at 6.4 million you'll reach the center of the core of the Earth. There'd be no gravity here, and you'd need a super heat and super pressure proof submarine that can cut through some of the hardest materials and moves like a rocket in space in order to take on this journey. So once that's invented, we'll get right on that trip. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Sakha Republic. Russia is the largest country in the world, but there's an area in it which is the 8th largest territory in the world, and it remains mostly untouched by humans. This area is so large, it's only slightly smaller than India. The majority of this territory is above the Arctic Circle, making it basically like a desert except the freezing cold kind. There is so little of a population in this area that if all the residents were spread out, there would be more than a square mile in between each resident. But here's the thing. You can't really live in most of this region. I mean, you can, but not without extreme difficulty. The ground is covered by permafrost, which of course has a huge impact on the ecology of the region. There is a mountain range that is located within this region, and that range is known as the coldest area in the northern hemisphere, so that says a lot. Because of the extreme weather, much of this region has gone unexplored and untouched by man, and I honestly can completely understand why. In our number 5 spot today, we have Mariana Trench. About 71% of the Earth is covered in water, and yet the oceans are the places we know the least about, which is kind of terrifying. Mariana Trench is located in the western part of the Pacific Ocean, just east of the Philippines, and is the deepest part of our planet's oceans. The trench is in the shape of a crescent and is about 2,550 kilometers long and 69 kilometers wide. Its exact depth is unknown, but what we do know is that if we took Mount Everest and put it in the trench, its summit would still be underwater by more than 2 kilometers. So it's safe to say it's pretty deep. The pressure that deep in the ocean is far too great for humans to withstand. The temperature is just above freezing, and it is incredibly dark down there, which makes it a perfect recipe of a place that we should stay the heck away from. There has been a very small number of divers who explored what is called the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known spot of the trench, but of course not without super heavy duty equipment, and no one has been able to stay there for an extended amount of time. So of course, like I just mentioned, there have been some people who have head down to some deep, dark parts of the trench, but most of it remains a mystery to all of us, and that includes what exactly lives down there. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Kamchatka Peninsula. Russia has made it on this list again, but this one is the exact opposite of the last one we talked about. From a frozen desert, we are now talking about a volcano belt. This belt contains 160 different volcanoes, 29 of which are still active today. One active volcano is enough for me to stay away from, so 29 certainly sounds like a place everyone should stay away from. There have been a few people who have studied the region over the years, but certainly not many. Other than the high amounts of volcanic activity, which of course are an extreme danger to anyone even close to the area, because of thousands upon thousands of years of forming volcanic rock, the area only gets more difficult to explore as time goes on. This is what has led to this area being one of the least explored places we have on our beautiful Earth. But seriously, looking at pictures of how stunning this place looks makes me want to ignore everything I just said and travel there to see it in real life with my very own eyes. In our number 3 spot today, we have Greenland. Okay, bear with me on this one because you're probably sitting there thinking I'm crazy for putting Greenland on this list, but I promise I'm not. Well, I think I'm not, and I'll let you be the judge. Of course, I know Greenland is an inhabited country, and although Vikings landed there all the way back in 1000 CE, there are so many parts of the farthest northern regions that we simply just don't know much about. Like, even as recently as 1999, there were only 6 newly discovered untouched islands just off the coast, and there is so much of the inland part of the country that remains uninhabited. Greenland is the largest island on Earth at an amazing 8 million square miles, but 80% of that is covered in ice, which makes it extremely difficult to traverse. Like, in some parts, the ice is as thick as 3,200 meters, and it's been that way for about 400,000 to 800,000 years. There's a super low population on Greenland, considering the harsh conditions just don't really make it a super ideal place to live, travel, or explore. In our number 2 spot today, we have Valadadojavari. This place is part of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil and is fully one of the most unexplored places in the entire world. Not only is it the home to some extremely deadly creatures, it also sees extremely heavy rainfall, which causes heavy flooding, and extreme currents in the river, which make it not only uninhabitable, but also difficult and dangerous to explore. Despite what I just mentioned, however, it is believed that one of our world's uncontacted tribes actually actually lives here. These people are able to live in this area and thrive without almost all of the things we use in our daily lives, and they remain uncontacted for a few reasons, but the main one being because we don't want to spread our diseases to them, which would likely wipe out their entire population, because that would be horrible and absolutely devastating, which we all know about very well. Because of this tribe of people and us not wanting to ruin their home, they're actually federally protected, and so is their land. There have been instances of no contact laws being broken by people like drug traffickers, but the government continues to protect these people and the land, and it will remain unexplored except by those who live there. It would be amazing to hear their stories, but I'm glad that we are doing what we can to protect them, because if they want to contact us, they know where we are. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Tsingy National Park. The Tsingy National Park is located on the western edge of Madagascar, but today I want to talk about the 2 large geographical features in the park, which are Big Tsingy and Little Tsingy. Tsingy can be translated into English as roughly where one cannot walk barefoot, and when you see it, you'll realize this name makes a lot of sense. These rock formations are plateaus that have had deep ruts cut into them by groundwater, which has left them totally unable to be walked on or through. This whole area is incredibly fascinating and is the home to many endemic species because of its unusual geomorphology. Many of these species are found only within extremely small areas within the Tsingies, because the summit, slope, and base of one limestone needle will all form completely different ecosystems, which is absolutely unbelievable. The Tsingies are a perfect example of what happens when humans leave a place alone and let nature and the earth just exist. It would be an amazing place to go and explore, but because of the nature of the limestone needles, we just can't, and that truly is probably for the best.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is a tale of an extraordinary phenomenon where a piece of architecture was built on a slant, accidentally, and it never fell down. The Leaning Tower of Pisa took 200 centuries to complete, starting in the year 1173. Having multiple generations pass on the lowdown of building the structure makes you think that broken telephone may have been the cause for it turning out the way that it did. In any case, over the centuries, it continued to slant more and more until 1990, when it was decided that something needed to be done as it was becoming unsafe, leaning 5.5 degrees from the perpendicular. It was blocked off to visitors until it was repaired and the leaning was decreased. In our number 9 spot, we have the Paris Catacombs. Established in 1810, the Paris Catacombs became a home to more than 6 million skeletal French heads. I'm not joking. It's quite extraordinary and creepy at the same time. It's an underground ossuary located, of course, in Paris, France, that was built to consolidate Paris's ancient stone quarries. It was made essentially as part of an effort to eliminate the city's overflowing cemeteries. It was largely forgotten about until musicians started holding concerts there, and now it's become quite the tourist attraction. So interesting. I definitely want to visit it at some point in my life. In our number 8 spot, we have the Island of Snakes. Yeah, I would have thought that this place only existed in my nightmares, but unfortunately it's real. There's an island called Iladakimada Grenji, and this island is infested with poisonous snakes. Yep, it's an island in Brazil that's blocked off to civilians because of how dangerous it is. Only researchers with doctors present are allowed on the island to study the snakes, as some of them are just too dangerous to have anyone go there without a doctor. Why couldn't an island of puppies exist? I know Japan has a cat island, and boy, do I want to go there. Dear creator, why snakes? Just why? Love your bestie, for the restie, Mel. In our number 7 spot, we have the Darvaza Gas Crater. Also known as the Gateway to Hell, the Darvaza Gas Crater is a giant fiery crater that has been burning for more than 40 years. It's located in the Turkmenistan desert, and apparently they say that it's the size of a football field. Okay, so let me get this straight. There is a fiery crater that looks like the gates of hell, hence the nickname, that has been burning for 40 years, and we're not trying to make it stop. Why? I shall never understand this world. But I guess perhaps we don't think that it's not completely unsafe because we don't seem to be trying to stop it. Apparently, it was created after a group of Soviet engineers thought that they had stumbled across an undiscovered oil field and began drilling. The ground collapsed and suddenly a fiery crater emerged. It's become a bit of a tourist attraction over the years, and even a Canadian scientist by the name of George Karunas went into the crater to retrieve dirt to examine, risked being burned to death, all in the name of science. In our number 6 spot, we have Thor's Well. In Cape Perpetua in Oregon, there is a place called Thor's Well, which is a gaping, seemingly bottomless sinkhole. Well, it's not actually bottomless, but it certainly seems that way as it swallows the seawater around it. This place is also known as being the drain pipe of the Pacific. It is a very dangerous natural wonder that scientists believe started out as a sea cave dug out by the waves before the roof eventually collapsed, and this then created an opening at the top and bottom. Scientists theorize that the well is likely only 20 feet deep. It's apparently a very magical sight to see on days that it is high tide, as the waves hit the rocks in a very Little Mermaid singing kind of way. If you don't get that reference, then sorry. The waves hit the rocks violently and funnels into the hole. That would be pretty spectacular to see, even though water scares me and I would probably want to be far away from it. Unless someone held my hand, then I would be fine. Hashtag wimpy kid. In our number 5 spot, we have the Fly Geyser in Nevada. This is a geyser that is located on a private island in Gerlach, Nevada, that apparently is very spectacular to see. It is one of Nevada's coolest attractions to see, in fact. If you don't know what a geyser is, it's a spring that has an intermittent discharge of water ejected turbulently, and with it is steam, as geyser field sites are usually located near an active volcano. The geyser apparently contains thermophilic algae, which thrives in moist, hot environments, and as a result, the rocks become colorful with hues of red and green. In 2016, the Burning Man Project, a non-profit organization, purchased the land that it's on, known as the Fly Ranch, for $6.5 million, and now the public has limited access to it. It must be a special place for them to have done that. In our number 4 spot, we have Lake Natron. The Salt Lake Natron, located in Tasmania, is probably one of my fave things to have existed on this planet. It's a pink lake, y'all. That's pretty cool. I don't know. If I lived close to there, I would be taking pics like all the time. Pink's my fave color, so that's why. How is this lake pink, you ask? Well, it's both a salt and soda lake. Not cream soda, although damn, that sounds delicious. On second thought. The thought of it mixed with salt makes me want to hurl, so never mind. The soda part just means that the lake is heavy on the alkaline side of neutrality. The lake is in the Eresha region of Tasmania, and it's quite massive at 57 kilometers long and 22 kilometers wide. It's quite shallow though at 3 meters deep. Because of its high alkaline pH, this is not a lake that you want to swim in unless you want to get sick. Ah well, at least it's pretty to look at. In our number 3 spot, we have Pamukkale Thermal Baths. Pamukkale is a town in Turkey that has thermal baths that are truly the most beautiful. Sparkling teal in color, these pools of water make you remember that the world is a beautiful, magical place. These baths formed as a result of an earthquake, and they are beside some historical cities. Notably, Hierapolis, an ancient Roman spa founded in 190 BC, is right beside these pools, so of course some believe they hold the wisdom and magic from the ancient times. They have also been nicknamed Cleopatra's Pool, as it is said that she swam there once. Damn, I definitely have to put this on my bucket list. In our number 2 spot, we have the River of 5 Colors. In the province of Meta in Colombia, there is a river that is basically a rainbow river, known for its many names: the Cano Cristales, the River of 5 Colors, Liquid Rainbow. This river is truly unlike anything you have ever seen. I know what you might be thinking. How is this possible? How can a river be colorful? Well, this is possible because of a few aquatic plants called fauna and flora that are always there, and they give the water the intense colors. The canyon and river is easy to visit. You just go to Serranía de la Macarena National Park and it's there. Pretty wild. I'm surprised that I have never seen one Insta selfie with this river before. In our number 1 spot, we have the glowing cave. There is a cave in New Zealand that's been given the name of the glowworm cave because, well, because it's full of millions of Arachnocantha luminosa, which is a glowworm species that is only in New Zealand. The glowworms are all seemingly at the top of the cave, just lighting up the cave in a very beautiful way. Did you ever have glow-in-the-dark stars on your ceiling as a kid, or even still now? Whatever, they're cool. Anyways, I did, and this reminds me of that. Perhaps I wonder if this is where the creators got their inspiration from. Blonde moment. That's the stars, Melissa. Whatever, just love me. This wondrous cave is a part of the Waitomo Caves, and it is easily accessible via a boat ride. They recommend that you go with a tour guide though in order to preserve the cave and to not bother the glowworms.
Starting off this list, at our number 10 spot, we have the Yellowstone Hot Spring. Yellowstone is known for its immense natural beauty, and one of the main attractions
They helped build my followers from 4,000 to 9,000 in just 2 weeks. Before I joined Social Growth
are its hot springs. Despite being attractive, however, these guys are not made for life to thrive. They are near the boiling point of water, and they are also acidic enough to dissolve nails. Definitely not the hot tub I want to be diving in, but despite this extreme environment, there are some microbes that absolutely thrive there. This teeny tiny form of life is sometimes responsible for giving the springs these super vivid, otherworldly colors. It is said that the most famous of all of the microbes in Yellowstone is a heat-loving bacteria called Thermus aquaticus, which apparently makes an enzyme that researchers use in genetic labs to make copies of DNA. Other life forms found include microbes that have the ability to eat hydrogen, and at the hot springs there was even a recent discovery of a completely new phylum of bacteria that can photosynthesize. In our number 9 spot today, we have Centralia, Pennsylvania. This door to hell is located in Pennsylvania underneath the cracked asphalt of one town's streets. Under these streets is an underground coal mine fire that was first set ablaze in 1962, and it just may continue burning for another couple hundred years, or maybe forever if it really is the entrance to hell like they say. It is unknown exactly how the fire was started, which is the topic of many arguments, but it quickly burned through all of the old networks of shafts and tunnels. After the fire started, sinkholes began to appear all over, and steam plumes, which were full of lethal amounts of carbon monoxide, began to rise from the ground. People started to compare what was going on underneath the city to what hell must be like. Once 1984 rolled around, the government began urging people to leave the city and even claimed to help with relocating costs, but as of 2013 there were 8 residents who refused to leave, and they ended up settling a lawsuit that included a $349,500 settlement and the right to reside in the town until the end of their lives. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Mariana Trench. This deep dark place is marked as the deepest point on Earth, and it is not the most friendly environment. Not only is it cloaked in darkness, but it also has immense pressure that we certainly cannot withstand. Close to the surface of the ocean, we're sitting at a base of 1 atmospheric pressure, and when you go just 10 meters deep, that number already doubles. Considering the Mariana Trench is 11,000 meters deep, this is obviously going to increase greatly. The pressure causes the air in your body to compress, and the deeper you go, the more dense the water becomes. While the concept of increasing pressure is easy to understand, it truly is hard to conceptualize how this change happens and just how deep this trench really is. 1 atmospheric pressure is 1.01325 bars, which is the unit used to measure pressure. So, like I mentioned before, this is where we are sitting when we are close to the surface of the ocean, but in the depths of the Mariana Trench, that number skyrockets to 1,086 bars, which apparently would be the equivalent of 100 elephants standing on you. That's a little easier to understand. So it's suddenly making a lot more sense as to why people don't journey down to the Challenger Deep very often, but despite that, this is a place that is absolutely teeming with life. In our number 7 spot today, we have hydrothermal vents. Speaking of the Mariana Trench, located here is a part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a tectonically active region where plates are colliding and causing subduction, which is how the trench itself was formed. Through this tectonic activity, as seawater seeps downward through the oceanic crust, it gets really hot and becomes very rich in chemicals. This leads to the water becoming so buoyant that it comes back out of the surface of the seafloor, and this is what is called a hydrothermal vent. The water coming out of the vent is that same super hot hot, super chemically rich water, and it is an extremely important part of underwater ecosystems. The water from the vent is highly acidic and hot, while the water in the depths of the ocean is slightly basic and freezing cold. There are many different smaller species who come to the vent areas because of the chemicals in the water as well as the heat, which helps certain types of food sources grow, which they then want to consume. This then leads to it being a feeding hotspot, as larger predators can also come to the vent to feed on other smaller organisms that are already feeding in the area. There are usually a high amount of animals found in the area of a hydrothermal vent, but not a wide variety of different animals, as the temperature extreme is not suited for everyone in the deep sea. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Galapagos Islands. Okay, this is one of my favorite on this entire list because it's just so crazy. Basically, the Galapagos Islands were pretty inhospitable to life, and you might be thinking, well, things live there, so how could that be true? These islands emerged in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, sort of as the cap on a still active volcano. That still active part is definitely a key there. The heat from the volcanoes basically sterilized them, and not only this, but they were 600 miles from land. Everything that lives on the island now naturally found its way there. Plants with seeds who flew through the wind, animals that rode in somehow on a current, vegetation that came on the back of a turtle. It truly is just remarkable. Of course, humans have interfered now and brought some different species, but even so, it really is just a very cool origin story. In our number 5 spot today, we have a nuclear reactor. This is probably the one place we could all just fully agree that life shouldn't exist, right? Well, there is one bacteria that is so hardy and so tough it can actually grow and thrive here. Deinococcus radiodurans is the most tough bacteria on Earth. It can withstand even the most extreme conditions such as cold, dehydration, vacuum, and acid, but the craziest part is that it is virtually radiation proof. These little microbes can withstand several thousand times the amount of radiation a human can withstand, as well as more radiation than any other bacteria on Earth. This superpowered bacteria is so strong that scientists can't quite figure out how it got this way. This has led to a hypothesis that suggests this bacteria may actually be from an alien planet, perhaps even Mars. Jury is still out on that for sure, but either way, a nuclear reactor is still pretty intense. In our number 4 spot today, we have the stratosphere. Yep, I really mean the stratosphere. This is the layer of the atmosphere of the Earth that sits about 6 miles above the ground. Deserts, such as the Sahara, are known for their massive dust storms that move millions of tons of soil each year, and there are tons and tons of microbes that move with them. Researchers have been able to collect microbes in the dust at altitudes of over 11 miles high. There are bacteria, there are fungi, there are viruses, there is stuff that you don't even want to know about there. This is all to say that even that high in the atmosphere, you could still get a cough. In our number 3 spot today, we have Lake Vostok. Many of us have heard of Atlantis, but have you heard of Lake Vostok? This lake is located in Antarctica, and it is so huge it is one of the largest lakes in the entire world. The lake not only has a large surface area, but it's also quite deep, which only adds to the volume of this lake. It's the lakiest lake out there, and here's the thing about it. It is covered by ice, and not just any ice, but the East Antarctic ice sheet, which is just the largest ice sheet in the world. This subglacial lake has ice so thick that we really don't know a lot about what lies beneath it, and this ice has been there for millions of years. But when the first samples of the actual lake water were taken, it became apparent that there may be species in this lake we know absolutely nothing about. So basically, it's just a lake that's been sealed for millions of years, and it's freezing cold, and life really does exist there. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression is part of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia, and it is a geological depression that came about as a result of Africa and Asia moving apart. The divergence of 3 tectonic plates caused rifting and volcanic activity. This place is the hottest place on Earth in terms of average year-round temperatures, and it is also one of the lowest places on Earth at 100 meters below sea level. There are active volcanoes in the area, there are salt springs, sulfur springs, and it only gets about 4 to 8 inches of rain every year. What I'm saying is that the place is stunning and has an incredibly rich geological history, but it isn't very hospitable. Despite that, there are people who call this place home. The Afar people have called this area home for many years, and of course that poses the question of how. Well, the biggest industry in the Danakil Depression is salt, and many of the people who live here will mine salt with their hands and then take a 2-day camel journey into the next town to sell it. The people who live here also—
Attention! The government could soon begin to pay you $1,000 a month, no matter how much money you make or what you do for a living. It's all thanks to what just happened inside this building you see behind me. This government handout is called Universal Basic Income. And while this idea of getting free money might sound good to you, it's actually terrible news for America. Hi, I'm Eric Fry, and I'm here in San Francisco to report on a disturbing new trend that I believe will soon end America as we know it. It started right here, inside the walls of this building you see behind me, and it's quickly spreading throughout America. Goldman Sachs economists estimate that this new trend could soon wipe out 300 million jobs around the world. That means millions could fall into financial hardship, even poverty, and they'll have to depend on the government for basic necessities. So, if you don't want to be on the losing side, please pay close attention, because what started here in San Francisco is already quickly spreading throughout America at a pace we've never seen before. Millions of Americans will end up on the losing side of this paradigm shift. But if you act today, you'll have a chance to end on the winning side of what has been described as the biggest revolution in human history. Like I mentioned before, my name is Eric Fry. I spent the last 30 years working in Silicon Valley and Wall Street as a broker, entrepreneur, analyst, and hedge fund manager. So this is not the first time I'm going public with a warning. For example, back in the year 2000, I warned everyone the dot-com bubble was about to burst. Those who listened to me avoided the bloodbath when the NASDAQ plunged 75%. I made a similar call in 2005 when I noticed another bubble, this time in the housing market. I even went on CNBC to get the information out to as many investors as possible. And by doing so, I saved thousands of Americans from financial ruin when the housing market completely collapsed 2 years later. More recently, in 2021, I predicted the crash in tech stocks and advised many of my readers to jump out of the infamous ARK Innovation ETF. Soon after that, tech stocks crashed, and that ETF dropped about 70%. In all, I've helped to alert investors ahead of crashes for 73 different stocks. Now, I'm telling you all this because I want you to take my warning seriously. This time, we're not just dealing with another bubble or a potential stock market crash. No, it's much bigger than that. Because what's happening here in San Francisco will exponentially increase the wealth gap in America. And if you end up on the wrong side of this economic shift, you could fall behind and never be able to recover. But if you take the 3 steps I'm going to cover here today, you could end up on the winning side of this
also have to deal with an average temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, but sometimes it can get as hot as 50 degrees Celsius. Somehow they have overcome the odds and the obstacles and managed to thrive in this extreme environment, and it is said that this was made possible over the centuries by their ability to adapt to need less food and water than other humans. Honestly, it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard. In our number 1 spot today, we have La Rinconada. This town is located near the Peruvian Andes, very close to a gold mine, and is actually the highest permanent settlement in the world at 5,100 meters above sea level. Between 2001 and 2009, the population of the town increased greatly because the price of gold rose 235% during that time. Because of the elevation, the town has an alpine tundra climate and an average temperature of around 1 degree Celsius. The city has no running water or sewage, and the population of people who live here are working themselves to the bone in extremely dangerous mercury-filled mines. They're also working under some pretty horrible conditions where they work 25 days of the month for no pay, and then 5 days of the month they can work for themselves, and they're allowed to take as much ore as they can carry on their shoulders. There's no guarantee that the ore will have any gold in it, however, and this terrible system is why many of the town's residents live in poverty. The town is a 6-hour bus ride from the nearest city on unpaved roads, and there isn't really a regular bus schedule, which makes it a fairly difficult place to get to.
Alright, jumping into our number 10 now, we have the Mariana Trench. This is the deepest point on Earth, located in the Western Pacific. It plummets to an estimated depth of about 10,994 meters. That's just over 36,000 feet. Now, to put that in perspective, that's a little bit less than the height of an average plane flight. So next time you're in a plane, look out of the window and you'll have a pretty good idea of just how deep the Mariana Trench is. Humans have been down to just above this level a number of times, but remember I said that the depth was estimated. It could go even lower to depths humans have never even seen before. Next up at number 9, we have the far side of the moon. Humans have been to the moon during America's Apollo missions. However, it has always been to the same side of the moon. You see, due to a phenomenon called tidal locking, we only ever see one side of the moon. In fact, we didn't even have a picture of the other side until 1959. The other side isn't too dark to visit, but it would present unique challenges to communication with Earth. Because of that, no human has stepped onto the far side of the moon. However, when we do eventually go back, that will likely change. Who knows? Maybe someone watching this video will be the first person to go there. Send me a picture. Next up at number 8 now, we have Gankar Puensum. Now this mountain may not be Everest, but it is a pretty big mountain, standing at almost 25,000 feet. It's the 40th highest mountain in the world, and it's said to be the highest unclimbed mountain. Now this isn't because it's impossible by any means, it's all political. The mountain is located within Bhutan's borders, and the country is reluctant to let people climb it because of local spiritual beliefs. They don't want their spiritual mountain to become just another kind of tourist hub like Everest. Because of this, nobody has ever been to the top, and it looks like nobody ever will. Alright, at the number 7 spot now, we have the Amazon rainforest. Now obviously humans have been here before, a lot of people actually live there, but this place is massive, covering 7 million square kilometers. It's huge, and there are definitely parts where no human has ever stepped before. You just have to look at the probabilities of this. There are new species being constantly discovered there every single year. There are even uncontacted tribes living there. In fact, Brazil, which is home to most of the Amazon, has more uncontacted human tribes in it than any other place in the world. The Amazon is a thick, impenetrable canopy of endless trees that cover an area over half the size of the US. If you're looking to be the first human to step somewhere, the Amazon is a pretty good place to start. Alright, moving on to number 6 now, we have the Namib Desert. This makes the list for the same reason as the Amazon. It's huge and very inaccessible. It's located in southern Namibia. People do live along its fringes, but the desert itself is as empty and hostile as you can imagine. It's thought to be the oldest and least populated desert on the planet, with almost no paved roads to get around. With all of this in mind, it's unimaginable to think that humans have walked on every single part of it. It looks beautiful in the pictures, but I wouldn't want to stay there too long. Next up at number 5 now, we have Northeast Siberia. Now when I say the word Russia to you, you guys might think of this, a bustling country of some 144 million people. However, there are parts of Russia that are seriously remote. Northwest Siberia is pretty inhospitable to any life, not just humans. The only reason humans even go there is for the oil buried deep below the permafrost. But for everything else, it's just a wasteland where even plant life struggles to grow. There is definitely frozen ground there that has never been trodden on. Alright, moving on to number 4 now, we have Further Than the Moon. That's what I'm calling this. On April 15th, 1970, the crew of Apollo 13 was slingshotting around the far side of the moon in order to save their failed mission and get back to Earth safely. At one point, they were 265 kilometers, that's about 158 miles, above the lunar surface. This meant they were 400,000 kilometers, or about 250,000 miles away from Earth. That is the furthest that any human has ever been from this planet. This is quite surprising because A, that was almost 50 years ago, and B, that record won't stand forever. With all these planned missions to Mars that will likely happen in your lifetime, it will be kind of weird to think that right now a human has never been past that nearby rock you see in the night sky. Alright, next up at number 3 now, we have Antarctica. Antarctica was the last continent to be discovered and visited by humans and is the least populated, for good reason. Although it's about the same size as the US and Mexico combined, it has a permanent population of just 1,000 people in the winter. That is partly due to its inhospitable nature as one of the coldest places on Earth, but also because of restrictions. Antarctica isn't owned by anyone and is protected by an international treaty. Because of its unique environmental nature, the animals there and its delicate ice shelves, you need a very good reason or connections to go there. If you do, you'll find a wasteland that has reached -89 degrees before. That's about -126 Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit. There's definitely areas there where humans have never dared or probably needed to venture to. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the Yucatan callouts. There's a series of caves in Mexico. Normally, caves aren't a problem for humans. We've been to the bottom of the deepest ones ever found. However, these caves in Mexico have proved extremely difficult to explore. They are a huge network of underwater caverns, which even marine life has struggled to get a foothold in. They were formed from collapsed limestone rock, which is still a major risk for humans going there, meaning even the most daring divers have not been to parts of them, never mind the rest of us. Alright, finally now at number 1 we have Greenland. Greenland was first reached by the Vikings about 1,000 years ago, but that doesn't mean there aren't huge parts of it untouched by humans. This landmass in the North Atlantic has towns and cities along its southern coast, but the further north you go, the more untouched it becomes. Even as recently as 1999, there were still new, completely untouched islands being discovered. Also, 80% of Greenland is covered in a thick ice cap sheet, over 10,000 feet deep in some parts. It's been that way for 2 to 3 million years, well before modern humans ever existed, meaning no human could have walked on that land even if they wanted to.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Alert. Just wanted to say Alert! Alert is a small settlement located on the northern tip of Ellesmere Island in Nunavut, Canada. It is considered one of the northernmost settlements in the world and is also one of the most inhospitable environments on
Okay, class, who would like to do problem 3 on the board? Please don't be me, please don't be me. I know, Miss Einstein. Let's give someone else a try, Ralphie. How about you, Sophia? Actually... Recess! Whew, saved by the bell. What happened, Sophia? I froze in front of the whole class. What if I'm not smart enough to do math?
on the planet. The area is characterized by extremely low temperatures, harsh winds, and long periods of darkness during the winter months. Despite these challenges, people still live in Alert. The settlement was established in 1950 as a weather station and military outpost during the Cold War. Since then, it has remained an important monitoring station for climate change and military activities in the Arctic region. The population of Alert fluctuates depending on the season, but there are typically around 50 people who live and work there. The residents are mostly military personnel, scientists, and support staff who work at the station. They face numerous challenges such as limited supplies, extreme isolation, and the constant threat of polar bear encounters. Despite these challenges, the people who live in Alert are proud of their unique community and the important work that they do. They have developed a strong sense of camaraderie and resilience that is necessary for survival in such an extreme environment. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Danakil Depression. We are going from one extreme to the other. The Danakil Depression is a part of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia and is a geological depression that came about as a result of Africa and Asia moving apart. The divergence of 3 tectonic plates caused rifting and volcanic activity. This place is the hottest place on Earth in terms of average year-round temperatures, and it is also one of the lowest places on Earth at 100 meters below sea level. There are active volcanoes in the area, there are salt springs, sulfur springs, and it only gets about 4 to 8 inches of rain every year. What I'm saying is that this place is stunning and has an incredibly rich geological history, but it also fully looks like it could be from another planet. This otherworldly landscape and quite inhospitable environment is the home to the Afar people. Somehow they have overcome the odds and the obstacles and managed to thrive in this extreme environment, and it is said that this was made possible over the centuries by their ability to adapt to need less food and water than other humans. Honestly, it's one of the most remarkable remarkable things I've ever heard. The Danakil Depression is a popular destination for adventurous travelers who are seeking an experience that is truly out of this world. Visitors can explore the area on foot or by camel, taking in the breathtaking views of the alien-like landscape. Despite the harsh conditions, the area is also home to a number of fascinating animals and plants that have also adapted to this very unique environment. In our number 8 spot today, we have Kabwe. Located in Zambia, this place has been described as the world's most toxic town. The toxins in this town are due to the previous century of mining and smelting, which led to generations being exposed to unbelievable amounts of toxins and a mass lead poisoning. The plants closed in 1994, but at that point, the damage had already been done. The population of 220,000 people that still live here are still exposed to lead in the dust and soil that is 10 times the US safety limit, but they stay out of necessity. At this point in time, the World Bank is now conducting a $65 million remediation project, and while that is great news, unfortunately, nothing can be done for all of the people who had to deal with this for the last century and a half. In our number 7 spot today, we have Omeokon. This place is located in Russia, and if you've heard of it before, there's a chance it might be because it is known as the coldest inhabited place on Earth. This town has a population of around 500 residents who live in an average temperature of around -40 degrees Celsius, although in the summertime the temperature does get to around 0. The ground is covered in permafrost, which of course makes growing crops an impossibility, so the main source of food is meat and fish. Due to the temperature here, living of course has to look a little different. It's too cold for plumbing pipes, so restrooms are usually outhouses, engines freeze easily, so cars are usually running continuously, and during the shortest days, the residents live in darkness for 21 hours a day. Getting to this small town can take you quite some time as well. If you're coming from Moscow, I don't know why you would be, if you're coming from Moscow, you'll have to take a flight to one of the closest towns, which are both still over 900 kilometers away. The road from these cities that leads to the town is called the Road of Bones, which is extremely ominous sounding, and probably a road that should not be traveled alone, just in case. In our number 6 spot today, we have Salar de Uyuni. Salar de Uyuni is the world's largest salt flat, located in the southwest of Bolivia, near the crest of the Andes. The area spans over 10,000 square kilometers and is characterized by a stunning, otherworldly landscape. This peculiar place was formed by the evaporation of a prehistoric lake, leaving behind a thick layer of salt crust that stretches as far as the eye can see. During the rainy season, the salt flat becomes a giant mirror, reflecting the sky and clouds in a breathtaking spectacle. It is truly unbelievable. It looks completely fake and is somehow very real. The unique terrain and climate of the area has also given rise to many unusual natural formations. The flat is dotted with small islands of rock and gigantic cacti, which serves as a haven for a variety of animal species. Yeah, I said giant cacti. While this place is mostly devoid of life, plant or animal, that is save for these cacti that can grow to be 12 meters or 39 feet tall. The area is also home to many active geysers and hot springs, as well as colorful lakes that are filled with flamingos during certain times of year. In fact, in November, this place becomes a feeding ground for 3 South American species of flamingo feeding on local brine shrimps. These are the Chilean, Andean, and rare James flamingos. Aside from its natural wonders, this place is also rich in cultural history. This area has been inhabited by the indigenous Aymara people for thousands of years, and they have maintained their traditional way of life and culture to this day. In our number 5 spot today, we have Itorkotomi. This town is located in one of the most remote areas of Greenland and actually requires a helicopter ride from the nearest airport in order to actually get to the town. It was founded quite recently, actually, in 1925 by a Danish polar explorer and around 80 Inuit settlers, and it is about as far as you can get from any other inhabited area in Greenland. Despite this recent settling based on ruins and other archaeological remains, it became clear that this area was once inhabited sometime in our history by Inuit populations of the past. There's around 450 residents, and the town is known for its wildlife that includes polar bears, musk oxen, and seals. This place can be a popular tourist destination because of the stunning northern lights, as well as other natural wonders. Cruise ships also love to stop here, but that can be a little tricky considering 9 months out of the year, sea ice will block any ship from docking. In our number 4 spot today, we have La Rinconada. This town is located near the Peruvian Andes, very very close to a gold mine. It is actually the highest permanent settlement in the world at 5,100 meters above sea level. Between 2001 and 2009, the population of this town increased greatly because the price of gold rose 235% during that time. Because of the elevation, the town has an alpine tundra climate and an average temperature of around 1 degree Celsius. The city has no running water or sewage, and the population of people who live here are working themselves to the bone in extremely dangerous mercury-filled mines. They're also working under some pretty horrible conditions where they work 25 days of the month for no pay, and then 5 days of the month they can work for themselves, and they are allowed to take as much ore as they can carry on their shoulders. There's no guarantee that the ore will have any gold in it, however. And this terrible system is why many of the town's residents live in poverty. The town is a 6-hour bus ride from the nearest city on unpaved roads, and there isn't really a regular bus schedule, which makes it a fairly difficult place to get to. In our number 3 spot today, we have Lake Nyos. Lake Nyos is located in Cameroon, and it is different from any regular old lake because of the volcanic crater that it sits in. The magma floor releases carbon.
It's a fact. In the new economy, average people are becoming millionaires faster and easier than ever before. But how do they do it? According to the news, the whole world's falling apart. Well, that's the million-dollar question. Now, if you're not interested in the million-dollar answer, go ahead and skip to the end of this video, and I'm sorry for wasting your time. But if you do want to know more, keep watching, and in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to teach you the fastest way that I've found to become a millionaire in the new economy. Hi, my name is Jeff Lerner, and I did not become a millionaire the traditional way. I didn't work 40 years for the man, didn't invent anything, definitely didn't inherit a trust fund or win the lottery, but I did take a massive shortcut. And since then, I've generated over $50 million in my online businesses, been on the Inc. 5000
dioxide into both the water and the surrounding air, making it a less than ideal place to live and breathe. Usually the CO2 just dissipates into the air, mostly harmlessly, but in 1986 there was a limnic eruption that caused catastrophe. A limnic eruption is very rare, but it's what happens when dissolved carbon dioxide suddenly erupts from lake waters, which then goes on to form a gas cloud. The resulting gas cloud is extremely dangerous. It is capable of displacing the oxygen in the area, which of course is lethal to any living thing in the area, which is exactly what happened in 1986. This limnic eruption caused a noxious cloud of more than 1 million tons of CO2. This ended up taking the lives of the 1,700 people in the area, as well as the 3,500 livestock, which made it the first known large-scale asphyxiation caused by a natural event. Despite the threat of another eruption, as well as the lake's weakening walls that could result in a massive flood, people have resettled the area around the lake. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't risk it, which makes me wonder why these people chose here. I'm sure there's gotta be a reason. In our number 2 spot today, we have La Oroya. Located in Peru, this town has a population of 30,000 people, despite the metal smelter contamination that has been seen since 1922. The smelter closed in 2009 after the company that ran it declared bankruptcy, but here's how that happened in the first place. The American-owned company ran out of money because they had to fund the environmental cleanup and the anti-pollution measures. Seems like maybe they should have chosen a different path. Seems like it didn't pay off to pollute someone else's air. I guess that they forgot that there's consequences for actions. It still remains as one of the most polluted areas in the entire world, and the toxic metals have gone on to infect the water, the soil, and the air. While it is completely unsafe to live there, people still do, and sadly, they suffer the extreme adverse effects of it. In our number 1 spot today, we have Zabul. The city is located in Iran, and it is an absolute hotspot for dust storms. The summer season is where the worst of it is seen, with what is known as the quote 120-day winds. This is when dust and other matter absolutely bombards the city, which is due to the disappearance of the wetlands as well as the extremely high temperatures seen in the region. These dust storms aren't just inconvenient, they're actually very dangerous for those who live in the area. So much so that every year officials hand out thousands of air pollution masks to help prevent the damage that these storms can cause to the lungs. lungs. In 2016, the city was named as the most polluted city in the world by the World Health Organization, and a study in 2017 even found that the damage from breathing this air for 30 minutes outweighs the benefit of 30 minutes of cycling, meaning it is exceptionally detrimental.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed? Because only the Sleep Number Climate 360 smart bed lets you each sleep up to 13 degrees cooler or warmer on either side, while you both sleep at your ideal level of firmness, comfort, and support, your Sleep Number setting. And now our all-new next-gen smart beds have temperature benefits, so you sleep better night after night. Sleep next level. Shop now at sleepnumber.com.
YouTube is the #1 site for millions of creators online, but as more people flood
Welcome to the most notorious stretch of ocean on Earth. It's been called the Devil's Triangle, or Hurricane Alley, but most of us know it as the Bermuda Triangle. 500,000 square miles of the Atlantic that has terrified and perplexed travelers, explorers, and even scientists for centuries. Since the time of Christopher Columbus,
and we're starting off this list with kanashibari. Kanashibari is the term used in Japan for sleep paralysis, translating to bound up with metal, referring to the sensation of being unable to move as if something is holding you down. In Japanese folklore, kanashibari is attributed to vengeful spirits or demons, yokai, who possess their victims in the dead of night, immobilizing them and restricting their breathing. It is believed that these entities visit sleeping individuals and immobilize them as a means of exerting control or causing harm. Stories and legends about the experience have been passed down through generations, and people who experience this phenomenon often report hallucinations of eerie figures. They might hear sinister whispers and this overwhelming feeling of pressure upon the chest. There are various spiritual practices aimed at warding off these sleep demons. Protective measures include reciting prayers or mantras before sleep, or sleeping in specific positions like on your side in order to prevent the occurrence of kanashibari. At number 9, we have the boba. There are tons of different spirits and supernatural creatures in Bengali folklore, but one of them is the explanation for the strange experience of waking up in the middle of the night unable to move. That being the boba, a type of spirit in Bengali folklore translating to dumb, unable to speak. And these entities have an awful habit crawling into people's homes when they're asleep on their backs, climbing onto their chests and strangling them. It's not certain what these creatures are said to look like, but from the few interpretations I've seen, they seem to have an almost goblin or troll-like appearance. Number 8, the ghost pushing you down. Many Cambodians refer to sleep paralysis as the ghost pushing you down, and it is believed that the terrifying phenomenon is caused by deceased relatives returning from the grave to visit their loved ones on Earth, and that is definitely a haunting idea. It's one thing to have a witch or an unknown spirit or demon harass you in the middle of the night. That's just what they do. It sucks, but it's not necessarily shocking. And how do you expect a demon to treat you? But grandma coming back from the grave to strangle you in the middle of the night, that is very upsetting. I'd like to think if a relative came back from the dead to see me, they'd have something nice to say, or at least, at the very least, just try not to physically attack me. This also conjures up a creepy idea that if there is indeed an afterlife, it could be much more sinister than we'd like to believe. Next up, we have the jinn. Primarily in pre-Islamic Arabian folklore, sleep paralysis was often thought to be caused by jinn possession. Jinns are spirits that inhabit the earth but are often unseen, able to take on a variety of different forms. They are mentioned in Islamic literature and are believed to be made of smokeless fire. They also possess free will and can be good, evil, or neutral. And it's sometimes said that during sleep paralysis, a person's body is vulnerable to jinn, who may try to harm or even possess them. Next up, we have the Alp. The Alp is a creature from German folklore that is often associated with sleep paralysis. It is believed to be a demonic being or a malevolent spirit that specifically targets individuals while they're sleeping. It's described as a small, shadowy figure, sometimes resembling a cat or a snake, but it is also capable of transforming into other forms. It also always wears a cap, sits on the victim's chests, rendering them immobile and causing a sensation of suffocation, often appearing in nightmares and feeding off the fear and anxiety of its victims. According to legend, there are some methods you can apply to ward off the Alp or even stop it from appearing entirely, so take some notes. You can start by plugging up all the holes.
Here's one thing you need to do before you buy anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this first. Are you worried that you aren't getting the best deals when shopping online? Tired of searching for coupon codes just for them not to work? What if I told you that there was a guaranteed way of knowing that you'll get the best deals and codes automatically applied at checkout at all your favorite stores like Amazon and Target? Don't believe me? Keep watching. Over 10 million people just like you have saved more than $800 million using this free tool in the last year. What is it? A 100% free browser extension that gives you 3 ways to save big. Number 1, find better prices on Amazon. Here I am on Amazon looking for a new coffee maker. I tend to drink single cups over pots, so I'll go with this Amazon bestseller. Looks like it's $110 plus tax. Not bad, but with this tool installed, the green savings button shows me there's a better deal with another seller on Amazon. I just saved over $22, and I only have to wait a few extra days. Number 2, no more wasting time searching for coupon codes. I've been shopping for a patio set for a while, and I came across this one. It looks like there are a few coupon codes to try. I just click try codes, and it automatically applies
In your living space. Probably a good thing to do. But anyway, whether you're worried about a sleep demon or not, you still don't want mice.